Welcome to the show, a Reddit friendship anthology. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Reddit Stories, where we delve into the perplexing, often twisted world of online confessions, personal dramas, and moral dilemmas. I'm Shane, your host, and today's theme is one of life's most cherished yet complicated bonds: friendship. As we know, friendships can lift us up or break our hearts, sometimes all in one day. They can be tested over restaurant bills, big announcements, misunderstandings, and even bizarre wagers. Today we're going to explore some Reddit stories that showcase friendships under enormous stress. Joining me are two friends of mine. Let's call them Tommy and Courtney. Together, we'll reflect on these tales, try to make sense of them, and see what lessons can be learned. We have a series of stories that illustrate just how fragile or resilient friendships can be when confronted with betrayal, miscommunication, and selfishness. We'll encounter people who hijack wedding celebrations, scapegoat their so-called loved ones, and find ingenious ways to measure joy against cost. It's a wild ride, so buckle up. Story 1. A friendship ends at Chili's. Our first story comes from a subreddit dedicated to people sharing their heartfelt or heart-wrenching confessions. It's titled, "I broke off from a friend group I've known for 7 years," over a tab at Chili's. The narrator, a 20-year-old woman, has been friends with two other young women, Charlie, 20, and Alex, 19, since middle school. They share common interests, fandoms, anime, K-pop bands, and have bonded over the years. All seems well until one day, they decide to go out to their favorite casual dining spot, Chili's. Normally, they split the check. This time, Alex invites a male friend, John, 18, a new addition to their outing. John shows up with just enough money for himself, thinking it's a typical group hangout. However, when the server asks if they want to split the check, Charlie, who usually insists on separate bills, suddenly says, "All on one." The narrator and John are baffled. Then Charlie and Alex turn to John with smug grins and inform him, not so subtly, that he will be paying for everyone's meals, over $125 total. Before John or the narrator can protest, Charlie and Alex stand up, walk out, and beckon the narrator to join them. She stays behind in shock. They have essentially ambushed John, expecting him to cover the entire group's tab without his consent. John and our narrator put their heads together. She has $30, he has $40. They're short. Alex and Charlie text the narrator, urging her to leave. Confused and upset, she confronts them, asking why they're doing this. Her supposed friends claim that John should want to impress them, that it's a man's role to treat them like princesses. They're deadly serious. To them, John's presence and gender mean he is on the hook for their expensive lunch. The narrator doesn't buy this nonsense. She's shocked by their audacity and cruelty. Meanwhile, John, who had saved $40 of birthday money just to hang out with friends, is left humiliated. The narrator calls her father for help. Surprisingly, her father sides with Alex and Charlie, telling her this is John's problem. Refusing to abandon John to a situation he never asked for, she calls her uncle. The uncle immediately understands the injustice and sends the money. He even comes to pick them up. Outside, Alex and Charlie are furious when they learn that John didn't pay for everyone, that the narrator ended up covering the tab with her uncle's help. They think she's overreacting. She realizes this friendship is toxic and decides to block them both. John also breaks ties. Later, as John and the narrator grow closer through shared gaming sessions, they reflect on how outrageous Alex and Charlie's behavior was. It seems something hopeful might emerge from this debacle. A new bond between the narrator and John. This first story sets a tone. Sometimes, people you've known for years can shock you with their selfishness. It raises questions about respect, fairness, and whether loyalty to old friends justifies tolerating unacceptable behavior. Our take. Sometimes you must break away from a friend group if they show you who they truly are, especially if their friendship is built on using and belittling others. Story 2. A mortifying proposal. Our second story comes from the relationship advice subreddit. The narrator, a 25-year-old woman, is stunned, confused, and mortified after her best friend Gordon 24, suddenly proposes to her out of the blue. The twist: they were never dating. They met at university 2 years ago. Both considered mature students in their early 20s, they bonded over the experience of living in the dorms and attending lectures. They became each other's go-to companions, drinking on weekends, joining clubs together, forging a strong platonic friendship. While they share good times, there's never been a romantic dimension. They've never kissed, never flirted seriously, never discussed dating. The narrator thought they were strictly friends. On a day trip to her hometown, a large city full of street vendors and artists, she decides to get a caricature drawn of herself. Gordon stands nearby. She faces the artist for 5 to 10 minutes, excited to see the result. When the caricature is done, she turns around to show it to Gordon, only to find him down on one knee, holding out a ring box, presumably proposing marriage in front of a crowd of strangers and tourists. She laughs, startled, assuming it's a prank, but then she sees Gordon's devastated expression. He wasn't joking. Completely bewildered, she cannot process where this came from. When she asks him if he's serious, he closes the box and says, "I guess not anymore," and storms off. Onlookers glare at her for humiliating him, unaware that they were never a couple. She returns to the hotel, worried about Gordon's state of mind. He texts her long messages accusing her of leading him on, breaking up with him, and publicly humiliating him. He insists he thought they were in a loving relationship, poised for marriage. She's stunned. She recounts that they never held hands, never defined themselves as more than friends. Yet he is convinced she misled him. Confused and hurt, she tries to clarify, but Gordon spirals, refusing to answer where he got this idea and lamenting that she has destroyed his world. He even mentions dropping out of university. The narrator cannot understand how he construed their entire friendship as a romance heading toward engagement. In the end, he leaves town and stops responding. She is left picking up the pieces, wondering how to move forward and what this means for their friendship. Our reflection: communication is key. One cannot assume that a platonic closeness automatically equals romantic love. This story highlights the danger of unspoken assumptions. Proposals should never be a total surprise in terms of status. The "are we even dating?" conversation should come long before a ring appears. Story 3, the pizza to joy ratio. Our third story, from the Am I the Asshole subreddit, offers a lighter, more humorous dilemma. The poster, OP, has developed a personal formula to determine whether a frivolous purchase is worth it, using what he calls a pizza to joy ratio. It works like this. A takeout pizza costs about $20 and saves you an hour of cooking time, providing an hour of relaxation and joy for $20. If he's going to spend money on something non-essential, he asks himself if that item will bring him at least as many hours of joy as the price divided by 20. For example, if he wants a $100 gadget, he wonders, will I get at least 5 hours of pure enjoyment out of this purchase, since $100 divided by $20 per pizza hour equals 5 hours? If yes, he buys it. If not, he saves his money. This simple ratio helps him avoid buyer's remorse. Recently, his friend is arguing with his wife about buying a vintage car. The OP says, "If you truly think you'll get that amount of joy out of it, go for it." The friend calls OP a hypocrite because OP once bought a full Ghostbusters costume for around $1,200, including boots and a proton pack, but OP counters that he wears the costume frequently, hangs the proton pack on his wall, and cherishes it. He has easily surpassed the pizza to joy threshold. The friend's wife now uses this ratio to evaluate all her purchases, cutting down on random spending. The friend is annoyed, believing OP's advice has made his wife overly frugal. OP wonders if he's the asshole for introducing this concept that's changing their financial dynamic. Our take: OP gave a harmless personal metric. The fact that the friend's wife loves applying it to everything, and now challenges the friend's spending habits, is not OP's fault. It's a helpful tool for mindful spending. The husband is just frustrated that his big purchase, the vintage car, is under scrutiny. This story is less about friendship drama, and more about how an offhand piece of advice can influence someone else's financial decisions. It's also a reminder that every family has its own way of justifying expenses. The OP is not the asshole. Story 4. Calling a wife the best friend. In this fourth story, a 26-year-old woman has married her husband, also 26, earlier in the year. Their wedding was beautiful, supported by both families. 2 months later, during her birthday dinner at her in-laws' home, she notices something odd. Her sister-in-law, 22, answers a phone call, and, when asked what she's doing, says she's celebrating her brother's best friend's birthday, referring to the narrator, who is actually her brother's wife. The narrator is puzzled. She's been with her husband for years, and now is married to him. Why would her sister-in-law call her the best friend, rather than wife or sister-in-law? Later, the mother-in-law repeats a similar pattern at her office, introducing her to a colleague as her son's best friend. The narrator and her husband are both perplexed. They confront his family, but the answer is always the same. Well, you are best friends. Yet, the narrator finds this disrespectful, as though they're refusing to acknowledge the marriage. She included in her wedding vows a promise to remain her husband's best friend for life, but that's a common sentiment, not something that should override wife. Is this some weird form of passive aggression? Some joke she's not in on? Her husband asks them directly, and they still double down, calling her best friend. The narrator fears they're refusing to accept her as family. She wants them to call her what she is, a wife and daughter-in-law. We're left with a sense that something deeper might be going on. Perhaps the in-laws don't want to admit they've lost their son to marriage, or maybe they're trivializing the union. The only clear solution is direct communication. The husband must insist on the proper acknowledgement. If they resist, it might indicate lingering resentment or hidden doubts about the marriage. Story 5. Engagement photos. Stolen at a wedding. Another story, also wedding-related, involves a narrator who got married last fall amid gorgeous autumn foliage. The wedding budget was modest, so a friend recommended a photographer who was talented but worked on a flexible schedule. Pictures would arrive when they arrived. Shortly after the wedding, a friend of the bride, the narrator, who had attended as a guest, announced her own engagement. Wonderful news. Except she got engaged at the narrator's wedding without telling anyone. This friend not only got engaged quietly during the celebration, but then asked the bride's photographer to take engagement photos right there, during a break when the wedding party was changing outfits. The unsuspecting photographer took romantic, couple shots of the newly engaged friend and her partner, not realizing she was capturing engagement photos at someone else's wedding. When the bride received her wedding photos, the photographer admitted to having a separate folder of this friend's engagement shots. The photographer felt uneasy about it and asked what the bride wanted to do with these photos. The bride is outraged. The friend never cleared any of this. It feels like a huge boundary violation to turn the bride's special day into a free engagement photo shoot. This was done secretly and only revealed after the fact. Now the bride contemplates deleting those pictures. She hasn't forgiven the friend's antics, even though she initially thought she was over it. Is it petty to delete them? The friend still hasn't asked for her engagement pictures, but it's only a matter of time. The photographer took them while working for the bride, meaning they technically belong to the bride. This situation underscores the complexity of wedding etiquette. Hijacking someone's special day for your own announcement or photo shoot is disrespectful. The bride wonders if she'd be the asshole for erasing that folder forever. Some might say, give them back and move on, while others argue the friend deserves no mercy. The moral: don't steal the spotlight at someone else's wedding. It can destroy the trust and goodwill that took years to build. Story 6. A best friend blames someone else for wedding hookup. Our final story is from a Best of Redditor updates thread and is perhaps the most dramatic scenario of all. The narrator, 24F, has a best friend, Caroline, 23F, and a younger sister, Nicola, 19F. Their families are close, tied into the same community, where everyone knows everyone. Recently, a large wedding with about 500 guests, almost a small town, took place. Everyone from their extended friend circles, including Caroline and Nicola, attended. At the reception, Caroline became extremely drunk and fixated on one of the groomsmen, Daniel, 28, who was in a long-term relationship of 6 years. His girlfriend didn't attend the wedding, reasoning she wouldn't know many people, and he'd be busy fulfilling groomsman duties. Caroline shamelessly flirts with Daniel, asking him to dance, to fetch drinks, and throwing herself at him. The narrator tries to intervene, but Caroline snaps at her. Daniel, somewhat intoxicated as well, doesn't strongly resist. Eventually, Caroline and Daniel vanish, and someone's mother, an acquaintance but not close, stumbles upon them having sex in a secluded room at the venue. Caught in the act, Caroline panics. Instead of admitting who she is, she claims to be Nicola, the narrator's innocent younger sister. Word spreads like wildfire. Nicola slept with Daniel and broke up his relationship. Guests whisper about how disrespectful and slutty this was, tarnishing Nicola's reputation overnight. Caroline not only lied but doubled down, telling others it was Nicola, not her, who hooked up with Daniel. The bride and groom are furious. Nicola is mortified. The entire community now looks at Nicola as a homewrecker. Only when Daniel confirms it was Caroline that he hooked up with does the narrator discover the truth. Still, damage is done. Caroline brushes it off, sending Nicola a half-hearted text with lols and ha-has, failing to grasp the gravity of the harm she inflicted. Now the narrator must decide what to do. Caroline had been a good friend for years, but this betrayal is enormous. Nicola is traumatized. The narrator realizes this kind of cruelty, a deliberate, reputation-ruining lie, is unforgivable. Reddit suggests that Caroline must publicly correct her lie. Eventually, after the narrator confronts Caroline, Caroline posts a confession on Facebook, admitting she was the one with Daniel. Some people commend Caroline's bravery for coming clean, unaware she only did so under pressure. Nicola's name is cleared, but the friendship is irreparably damaged. This story shows how a single reckless act can destroy trust and sow misery. A real friend would never sacrifice another's reputation to save face. Reflections on these stories. The beauty and horror of these anecdotes is that they highlight an essential truth. Friendship is often tested not during ordinary times, but at its outer limits. At weddings, expensive dinners, moments of personal triumph, or crushing disappointment. In each story, something that should have strengthened bonds, like a shared meal or a celebration of love, turns into a stage for betrayal. Chili's tab trap. Two longtime friends try to con an unsuspecting guy into paying for everyone's meal. When the narrator refuses to betray this stranger, she realizes her old friends lack basic decency. The result, a longtime friendship dissolves over a 125 of tab and a cruel scheme. Surprise proposal. Gone wrong. A misunderstanding of epic proportions. Gordon proposes without any romantic foundation, shattering a platonic friendship because he made assumptions and never communicated his feelings beforehand. The narrator loses not only a friend, but her sense of trust in what seemed like a stable bond. Pizza to joy ratio. Not every story involves malicious intent. Here, a harmless metric for judging purchases inadvertently disrupts a friend's marriage dynamics. While it's more humorous and low stakes, it still reminds us that friends can influence each other's lives in unforeseen ways. The best friend. Wife. A subtle passive-aggressive tactic or a bizarre misunderstanding. The in-laws refuse to call their son's wife what she is, instead demoting her to best friend. While not outright sabotage, it's an erosion of respect. Friendships and family ties suffer when proper roles and titles aren't acknowledged. Stolen engagement photos at a wedding. A supposed friend uses the bride's wedding photographer as a free engagement shoot. This selfishness is quiet, but it's deeply disrespectful. The bride, feeling violated, considers deleting the photographs. Such an act erodes trust and reveals that not all friends respect boundaries. Blame the innocent sister. The most egregious story, a friend gets caught cheating with a groomsman and scapegoats a younger innocent girl. This vicious lie shows how low some people will go to save themselves. Even a long, close friendship can't survive such a deliberate act of harm. In many of these stories, the climax involves revelations of character. People show who they truly are when placed under stress or temptation. The person who tries to shift blame at a wedding, or who imposes secret rules at a dinner, or who refuses to acknowledge a marriage bond. Each is revealing a profound lack of empathy and integrity. Advice and takeaways. Clear communication. Whether it's romantic intentions or financial expectations, never assume the other person understands your perspective. The surprise proposer exemplifies how costly silent assumptions can be. A healthy friendship can handle honest conversations about boundaries, roles, and even money. Respecting boundaries and events. Announcements like engagements or big life changes deserve their own time and place. Hijacking someone else's wedding is a surefire way to breed resentment. A real friend would respect the significance of their friend's big day instead of trying to steal the spotlight. Accountability and repairing harm. Mistakes happen. Sometimes alcohol lowers inhibitions, or poor judgment leads to misguided actions. But when you harm your friend, taking responsibility is crucial. The story of Caroline blaming Nicola is a stark reminder. If you can't own up to your wrongdoing, you don't value the friendship. True repair requires proactive steps. Clearing your friend's name publicly, making amends sincerely, and understanding that trust might never fully return. Moral consistency. The Pizza to Joy ratio story reminds us that moral frameworks and personal rules, no matter how silly or small, influence others. When giving advice, understand that friends may apply it rigidly. Still, it's on each individual to maintain perspective and fairness. You can't blame the advice giver if you distort their approach to justify restrictive behavior. Know when to walk away. Sometimes friendships are not worth saving. People who repeatedly disrespect you or others you love, who show a pattern of deceit or selfishness, might not change. Standing by them out of loyalty to years past only prolongs the pain. Cutting ties can be the best decision, allowing for healthier relationships elsewhere. Why we crave these stories. Reddit's confessional culture thrives on such narratives because they resonate with universal themes: love, betrayal, confusion, and redemption. We read them to reflect on our own relationships. Could this happen to us? Would we be strong enough to walk away from a decade-long friendship over a betrayal at a restaurant? Would we stand up for a sibling wrongfully accused at a wedding? These scenarios are extreme, yet not unimaginable. They also provide teachable moments. Many of us have been in conflict with friends. Maybe not as dramatic, but still painful. Hearing how others cope helps us better understand what we value in our relationships and how to set boundaries. Reddit's crowdsourced advice often converges on principles like honesty, empathy, responsibility, and fairness. Conclusion: finding the courage to move on. If there's a central lesson across all these stories, it's that genuine friendship is built on trust, respect, and honesty. When these elements erode, what remains is a hollow connection that can easily break under stress. Some friends will shock you, betray your trust, or attempt to rewrite your story to their advantage. Others may never fully understand your feelings. Yet the individuals sharing these stories often emerge with stronger convictions and a clearer sense of what they want in their friendships. In the Chili's story, the narrator discovers that loyalty to longtime friends must end if they show no basic decency. In the surprise proposal, the woman learns the importance of explicit communication before life-changing acts. In the pizza ratio scenario, we see that advice can become a double-edged sword. The best friend wife insists on her rightful title, while the stolen engagement photos story warns us that even subtle acts of selfishness can damage relationships irreparably. Finally, the scapegoating at the wedding shows how quickly a good friend can reveal themselves as malicious when cornered. As we wrap up today's exploration, let's remember that not all friendships are meant to last forever. Some people are lessons, others lifelong companions. The beauty of the human experience is that we get to decide whom to keep close. And when friends become toxic, we have the right, indeed the responsibility, to let them go. After all, life is too short to share with people who can't celebrate your wedding without staging their own engagement, who misuse your generosity at a family dinner, or who would smear your sibling's reputation to save face. True friends lift you up, they don't tear you down. So thank you for joining us on this journey through friendships tested to their limits. We hope these stories help you reflect on your own relationships, appreciate the good friends you have, and give you the strength to walk away from those who do not deserve your trust or kindness. Until next time, May your bonds be genuine, your celebrations drama-free, and your days filled with people who know how to treat you right.